Fallout 5 is effectively a next-decade problem. That is the harsh reality we have to accept right now. Todd Howard has been remarkably transparent about the timeline, essentially confirming that the fifth mainline entry is waiting in line behind the Elder Scrolls 6. Given that we are still watching the dust settle on Starfield and Elder Scrolls is deep in the oven, doing the math on Fallout 5 puts us comfortably into the 2030s. For anyone who remembers playing Fallout 4 on launch day, realizing your next mainline fix might be nearly 20 years after that release is enough to make you want to crawl into a cryopod. But this news isn't actually a death sentence for the franchise. In fact, it might be the best thing that's happened to the IP since 2010. While everyone is doom-scrolling about the wait for Fallout 5, they are missing the nuance in Howard's recent comments and the massive paper trail left by the FTC leaks. The actual headline here isn't that Fallout 5 is delayed, it's that Bethesda knows they cannot leave this IP dormant for 15 years. They have a plan to fill the gap, and the evidence points to a three-pronged assault involving a remaster, a spin-off, and potentially the return of original creators. The most concrete piece of this puzzle comes from that infamous Microsoft versus FTC court battle. We saw internal roadmaps that were never meant for public eyes, and sitting right there on the timeline was a Fallout 3 remaster. This wasn't a blurry rumor or a 4chan leak, this was an internal business document. Now, it is crucial to note that during the trial, Microsoft executives like Phil Spencer claimed these documents were outdated and that plans had shifted. However, the fact that a remaster was on the roadmap at all confirms that the idea has been in the pipeline for years. It proves that the return to the capital wasteland isn't just fan fiction, it was a corporate strategy. If we look at the historical context, this makes perfect sense. Bethesda has always operated on massive cycles. Think back to the transition from Oblivion to Fallout 3. There was a rhythm there, a sharing of technology and design philosophies. But now, game development cycles have ballooned from 3 years to 7 or 8. They simply cannot rely on their primary studio to churn out hits fast enough to keep Game Pass subscribers happy. Microsoft didn't spend $7.5 billion just to wait a decade between major franchise entries. We are seeing a shift in strategy that mirrors what Rockstar does with Grand Theft Auto, but with a crucial difference. Bethesda is willing to hand the keys to other developers. This brings up the massive technical question hanging over a potential Fallout 3 remaster. Are we looking at a lazy up-res or a full-blown remake? Industry insiders like Nate the Hate have actually reported that an Oblivion remaster is in the works at external studio Virtuos, potentially running an Unreal Engine 5. If Bethesda applies the same outsourcing strategy to Fallout 3, it is a terrifying and exciting prospect. The original Fallout 3 runs on Gamebryo, an engine held together by duct tape and hope. Porting that unique, clunky, VATS-heavy gameplay into a modern engine is a massive undertaking. Imagine the capital wasteland rendered with nanite and lumen, the green tint of the atmosphere replaced with genuine volumetric lighting, the crumbling ruins of DC actually having geometric depth rather than being flat textures. However, the risk here is the feel. Bethesda games have a very specific floaty physics interaction that, for better or worse, defines the experience. Moving to a new engine risks losing that jank charm that makes a Bethesda RPG feel like a Bethesda RPG. If you can't pile up 300 cheese wheels and watch the physics engine explode, is it really Fallout? That is the technical tightrope they're walking. The community is also obsessed with the Obsidian factor. This is where the fan theories start to hold some serious water. We know Tim Cain, the literal father of Fallout, is officially back at Obsidian, not just consulting, but as a full-time employee. While he has explicitly told fans don't bother guessing what he's working on, just having the original creator back under the same roof as the IP he created is huge. The narrative writes itself. New Vegas is widely considered the peak of the modern series, and fans have been screaming for a sequel for over a decade. But let's look at the New Vegas 2 theory with a critical eye. It is the obvious choice, but maybe too obvious. Tim Cain's comments about subverting expectations suggest that if Obsidian is touching Fallout again, they might not want to retread old ground. The Mojave is done. The NCR and Legion stories have been told. A more compelling theory is that Obsidian could be taking the franchise to a completely new location, maybe the Pacific Northwest, or a Midwest setting that has only been hinted at in lore. An Obsidian-led Fallout that isn't shackled to the New Vegas branding allows them to innovate without being constantly compared to a game released in 2010. There is another layer to this onion. Bethesda Austin, the team that stabilized Fallout 76 after its disastrous launch, has quietly become one of the most experienced survival RPG teams in the industry. As support for 76 eventually winds down or enters maintenance mode, you have a massive studio sitting there with thousands of assets, intimate knowledge of the lore, and a working multiplayer backend. The pivot here could be towards a smaller, standalone experience. Think along the lines of what Far Cry New Dawn was to Far Cry 5, or what Assassin's Creed Mirage was to Valhalla, a tighter, asset-heavy spin-off that uses the Fallout 76 codebase but strips out the online requirement, focusing on a single-player narrative. This would be the smartest way to bridge the gap to Fallout 5 without needing a 10-year dev cycle. Analyzing the release predictions based on this data paints a clearer picture than Todd Howard's vague decade-away comment. If the Fallout 3 remaster was targeting FY24 internally on that old roadmap, even accounting for delays and shifts in strategy, we are likely looking at a 2026 release window. That lines up perfectly with the lull after the initial Starfield expansions and before Elder Scrolls 6 marketing kicks into high gear. It gives Microsoft a major holiday title without disrupting their flagship RPG team. Following that, an Obsidian project or a Bethesda Austin spin-off likely lands in the 2028 to 2029 window. This strategy keeps the brand alive, capitalizes on the massive influx of fans from the TV show, and prevents the IP from fading into obscurity. It transforms the wait for Fallout 5 into a steady drip feed of content. We also have to consider the engine implications for Fallout 5 itself, whenever it does arrive. Starfield's Creation Engine 2 was a massive leap, but it still showed its age in character facial animations and seamless travel. By the time Fallout 5 rolls around in the 2030s, we will likely be looking at a Creation Engine 3 or a heavily modified version of CE2. The technical leap needs to be comparable to the jump from Morrowind to Oblivion. We are talking about fully seamless open worlds with no loading screens for entering buildings, something Cyberpunk 2077 achieved years ago and Bethesda is still struggling with. The news of Fallout 5 being so far away actually implies that they are waiting for the tech to catch up to the ambition. They know they cannot release another game that feels a generation behind. Fan theories are currently running wild about the location of Fallout 5, but the delay supports the idea that they might be waiting to see how the landscape changes. Rumors of San Francisco or New York have floated around for years, but with a release date so far out, pre-production is likely still fluid. The leak culture around this game is fascinating because it's fueled entirely by desperation. Every time Todd Howard sneezes, someone writes a 3-hour video analysis. But the silence is actually the loudest part. If they were close, we'd see trademark filings, we'd see casting calls. We aren't seeing any of that for Fallout 5, which reinforces the next decade timeline. However, the silence on the other projects is different. It's the silence of an NDA, not the silence of non-existence. The fact that we haven't seen a denial of the Fallout 3 remaster after the leaks is telling. Usually, if a leak is wildly inaccurate and damaging, a studio will find a way to squash it softly. Instead, we've had radio silence, which in this industry is often a tacit confirmation. The return of Tim Cain to Obsidian is the wild card that disrupts the entire timeline. You don't hire the guy who invented the universe just to have him sit around. His expertise is specific, his voice is specific. Even if he's working on something new, his influence at the studio steers the ship towards deep RPG mechanics, moral ambiguity, and the dark humor that defines Fallout. If Obsidian is indeed working on a spin-off, expect it to lean much harder into the RPG elements than Fallout 4 did. The criticism of Fallout 4 was always that it was a great shooter but a mediocre RPG. Obsidian's involvement corrects that course immediately. So where does that leave us? We are in a unique waiting room. The main event, Fallout 5, is a distant dream, but the undercard matches might actually be more interesting. A remaster of Fallout 3 offering a chance to see the bleakest, most atmospheric entry in the series with modern fidelity. An Obsidian spin-off offering the narrative depth that hardcore fans have been begging for. And Bethesda Austin potentially reusing assets for a new survival experience. The takeaway from all this news isn't despair, it's patience. The franchise is expanding horizontally rather than vertically. Instead of just getting a numbered sequel every 5 years, we are entering an era of an expanded universe. It's a risky strategy. It relies on external partners maintaining the quality of a legendary IP. But given that the alternative is complete silence until 2032, I think most of us will take the gamble. The Wasteland is going to get very busy very soon, just not in the way we expected. And honestly, if we get a polished, crash-free return to the Capital Wasteland in the next 2 years, nobody's going to be complaining about waiting for Fallout 5. The future of Fallout isn't about one game anymore. It's about an ecosystem, and that ecosystem is finally starting to wake up.